it's easy to follow a program that's proven to be successful and get great results, but to try to do something different, to be better than just have great results, have incredible results, and that's what they're doing. And this is what Zatopek did. He chose a journey that no one had been on before.
This podcast is brought to you by Trivelo Coaching, where we help triathletes and cyclists like you train smarter to race faster. I'm your host, Jordan Donnelly, and on my left is former Australian Ironman Champion and head coach of Trivelo Coaching, Gerard Donnelly. In today's episode, discussing the epic victory drive that age groupers get after a special race, Jack Rayner beats the 10-kilometre Australian record, which has been standing for a long time now, and part 2 of the Emil Zatopek story, the man who changed running and the man that revolutionised interval training. So much to discuss in today's episode. We can't wait to tell you part 2 of the Emil Zatopek story. Dad, welcome to the episode. Let's start with a normal segment. What are you grateful for?
Thanks, Jordan. I'm looking forward to talking about the famous Zatopek again. It was a bit of fun last week, and I can't believe we have to do this over 2 episodes. It shows the stature of the man. So my gratitude this week is a very simple one. It happens to be a long weekend coming up. We have a holiday down here in Melbourne for a horse race, which is pretty weird. And there's a public holiday. So it ends up being most people take Monday off. The horse race is on Tuesday, so people have a 4-day weekend. Some people take Friday as well. So it ends up being a huge break in your normal routine for. It's great. It's like an Easter holiday. And it's always an opportunity to do something and get away. And this particular weekend, we're going away with a small group of fellow cyclists to do a little bit of training camp up in famous Bright, which is the hills area of Victoria, which has got 3 fantastic climbs: Buffalo, Hotham, and Falls Creek, and we'll spend our time getting some strength in there for a lot of the guys. It's for the upcoming Tour of Bright, which is a famous race in Victoria, which is a 3-stage race. So yeah, my gratitude is that we get the opportunity to get away, and get to spend some time with people who are thinking the same and really wanting to improve their cycling and get stronger. And I just love these weekends when you can plan it, and the only thing that's could be a factor is that the El Nino is having and playing havoc with the roads and the amount of water that's landed in Australia in the last 2 months. So I know some of the roads are cut already. The road to Falls might be preventing us to ride up there. But besides that, it should be. I'm very grateful for that opportunity.
It's a classic cyclist gratitude where you can't wait to spend 6 hours a day in the saddle riding up some big mountains. It still makes me laugh, and it's funny. I was going up the mountain with a bunch of mates to go on a snow trip, and it was a mountain in New Zealand, and I hadn't been there for a long time. And going up on the bus, you catch the bus up, and it's this epic drive where you get the most spectacular views. And 3/4 of the way up, I was just looking down, and it has heaps of hairpin turns. It was like a New Zealand Alpe d'Huez. It's the Remarkables, if anyone knows it, in Queenstown. And I just muttered to myself, gee, I'd love to ride this. And it was just a very passing comment. I didn't think much of it. I was just looking out, and 2 of my mates just looked at me like I was bat crazy. They go, what the hell did you just say? And I thought, it's so funny. It's such a natural thing for a cyclist to want to do. But to everyone else, they're going, did you just say you'd want to ride up this? You weirdo. It's just, it's very funny. And my gratitude is somewhat in line with that. I am just grateful for running. I just really enjoy running, and every time I'm on a run and I get into it and you get into the groove and you get through that warm-up phase and you get into the flow state where you're running comfortably, your heart rate's not too high. It's just one of the best feelings in the world, I reckon. So that is my gratitude.
And I can totally concur with that. And if I was able to run, I would love to put that back into my fitness. And unfortunately, I've damaged my body so much that I can't run anymore, which is very frustrating. And it is one of my passions that I'd love to do. I'm spending a lot of my time walking, but you're right, running is such a buzz, and you get such a good endorphin release from just the satisfaction of cruising around, and you're providing the propulsion, not a bike or swimming through water. You're actually running yourself, and it's a great gratitude.
Moving on to the next segment, what has caught your attention? And I mentioned the special words, the victory drive. Now, that is not something that everyone will be familiar with, but it is something that we're very fond of at Trivelo. So explain the victory drive to the listeners.
Yeah, look, the victory drive is it's a bit of a weird one, really, and I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed about it, but it is one of those things, special moments you share with yourself. And that in itself is pretty weird, but I think it's worth telling because we are generally a weird group of people who love putting ourselves under pressure and love to test ourselves. That's kind of the journey we're all on, seeing how much we can improve ourselves and seeing what we can get out of ourselves, setting goals, and the victory drive is about that. It's about setting goals and having small steps along the journey, and then reaching for that goal and succeeding. And whether it ends up in actually victory, as in winning the event, or whether it's just you performing at your very best that you've ever done, and that may end up you being 60th instead of 120th in an event. It's still the victory drive. You've moved up. I want to specifically talk about one of the guys that I've had the pleasure of coaching. I don't normally mention names on the podcast, but this guy's a lovely guy, cyclist from WA, Western Australia. And when he first joined Trivelo, he was a pretty accomplished rider, but he'd never won a state title or a national title or any title for that matter, and had not won a lot of races, and was very competitive and always thereabouts. But he said to me when we started, I just want to win that state road race. That would be a real goal for me. And I said, that's a great goal to aspire to. And cycling's such a difficult one to pin your goal setting onto a result, because there's so many factors that happen in a bike race. It's just not about fitness, and we've said many times, it's not only the fittest person who will win a bike race, because there's so many tactics involved in bike racing. You could be by far the strongest rider and never win because your tactics are horrible. So you need both. You need really good tactics, experience, when to make your moves, how much to ride, when to ride hard, when to burn a match, and you need to be fit to accommodate all those things you want to do in a race. And so, yeah, Dave rang me the other day, and first of all, he sent me a picture on the text with a photo of him on the top step. That meant, in my mind, he was just won the state road title, and the emotion I felt straight away was far out. That's pretty impressive, because I know how hard it is to win that. And soon enough we got to talk, and he was in the car on the way home, which is the best time to talk. Whether you've won or lost, it doesn't matter. It's a really good time to go over the analysis of the race. And it's funny because he said to me, I got in the car and just yelled. I just yelled out, fuck yeah, by myself, no one around. You need to be humble when you're on the dice. You need to be keeping quiet. Inside you're bursting because of what you've achieved. And it's a big thing to be state champion in road racing for your particular state. So when you get by yourself, you just kind of have this big release, and that's something that I've experienced myself. And I happened to say that to Dave. That I said to him, when you got in the car, Dave, because I didn't know about this, I asked him, when you got in the car to drive home, explain your feelings. And he said, I just yelled out. And I said, that's just truly amazing, because that is the victory drive home. That is what makes it special, that you've really done what you wanted to do, and you appreciate everything that went into it, the preparation, the training regime that you put yourself under to work towards this goal. The years of improving your fitness, and then talking tactics that we've done over the 2 years about when to attack, when not to attack, what to do when you attack. All those things worked out perfectly, and he rode the best tactical race that he's ever ridden. And that victory drive home is the special one that, you just want to share it with yourself. And if you can share it with someone who knows what you've gone through, it's even more sweeter. And yeah, I must say it was, a very emotional conversation we were having, and it's one that is really special, and I think it's worth noting, and that on the topic of what's caught my attention, I was kind of buzzing, and I don't want to sound like it's just I get excited about victories. I get excited about PBs. I get excited about people achieving. And I would have the same emotion, whether you ran a 2-minute 10K and it happened to put you 20th place. PB, and that's what I'm talking about. Is setting yourself goals, going about it so diligently, and not leaving any stone unturned. And it's just a special feeling that it's taken him 2 years to get to this point. And he's been a model athlete to coach. It's what do I need to do, and listening the whole time. And it's a partnership we've developed where I'm listening to how he's feeling. He's got a high powered job. He's a surgeon, and so cycling's a release for him, and it's fun. And that's the way he's taken on this journey. And he wants to train properly. He doesn't want to waste any training sessions. He wants to know what session he's doing and what's going to benefit the benefit he's going to get out of it, because he's got a very busy schedule, like we all do. So it's the victory drive home. It's something that I'm sure people once they've heard this story will start thinking about that when they leave their fun run or when they leave their triathlon. And it's just something that you do yourself. And if you can share it with someone special, it's even better, with your wife or your partner or your best mate or whatever. It's an awesome
coach, yeah.
An awesome thing to experience.
I absolutely agree, and I've had many victory drives homes where it was just a PB. I've done a massive PB and I would have come 25th in the race. But that was I was just as ecstatic on that drive home. You're doing the same thing, yelling to yourself. I've done that victory drive home. Giving yourself a huge cheer off a 5K park run PB. It's when you train hard and you're working towards something, and then you get a good result. You just get that emotional release. And like you said, it's along the journey, there's these little stepping stones that we test ourselves against. And when you get a reward for it, it's such a nice feeling, such a good feeling. But especially when it's one of your A goals, a really big result you're looking for, when you get an A race you're working towards, that's when you get that huge just rush. And that is a bit of an end result that you're working towards, even though we say it's about the journey. But that part is so worth it. And then you reset and go again. So yeah, that's a great one. What's got my attention is Jack Rayner, Australian superstar runner, just broke the long-standing 10-kilometre national record, the Australian national record, in a time of 27:43, blistering pace. He broke Craig Mottram's record, and I think this is a really good indicator. We've been saying this for a while, and everyone is really seeing that Australian middle distance running is absolutely stepping up. Ollie Hall winning our first 1,500-metre gold at the Commonwealth Games recently. Craig Mottram was our best middle distance runner to come through for a while, and a lot of his records have been held until now, and they're all a lot of them are starting to be broken or started to be tested. His mile record was broken by Ollie Hoare as well recently. He had all these records for the last 10, 15, up to 20 years, and now they're really being tested. And I think that's really great to see, because he was one of our most competitive runners on the world stage, and a lot of the runners now are getting to that stage. We see Stu McSwain at the very top competing against the world's best consistently in the Diamond League. But one of the key things that stood out for me was, and this is one of your theories, Dad, that you're really, really strong on, and that is Jack Rayner has spent the last few years as a marathon runner. He's been training for the marathon. He went to the Tokyo Olympics for the marathon, and it's only in the last 12 months or less he decided to step down and have a crack at a few 10-kilometre races. I think his first 10-kilometre race was Zatopek last year. I think that's correct. And he found he was really good. And after all these years of marathon training, when he steps down, he's got that strength. And I don't know the intricacies of his training once he decided to do some 10K races, how much speed work he did. But I think what we want to say behind your theory is that this longer endurance running can give you so much strength that you can perform at shorter distances just from that base, just from that strength that you get from that endurance. And look at him. He's now the fastest 10-kilometre runner in Australia, even though this isn't his event. And I just find that fascinating.
Yeah, and it's a great point you make, but there's so much that we don't know about his training. So we're kind of really just guessing, but we do know that he did do a lot of marathons. So his preparation would have to be, very much structured towards endurance type training. And we're presuming that, he's got that strength for the last 2K and a 10K race from his marathon base. And that's the point we're making is, getting stronger over longer training will help you on shorter stuff. Of course, you need to do specific training sessions that's going to contribute to that, such as some faster running or some goal pace running or some intervals or some hill repeats where you are running, somewhere around that sub-threshold to VO2 period. So those training sessions are really important, but don't discount the value of the big volume that you've got in your fitness bank that we talk about all the time, that can actually help you contribute to running an Australian record, the fastest ever Australian, that's been held for a long, long time. And ironically, we're talking about Zatopek today, and if you look at his time back in 1952 for the 10K when he won the gold medal at the Olympics, and it was a world record at the time, wasn't that much slower. And he was running on a pretty crappy surface, cinders surface, with dodgy shoes to be even, more handicapped. And it shows you the caliber of Zatopek. And look, we've got guys who've got all the best facilities, best running shoes, carbon sole shoes that you should be able to run faster on, tracks that have got you the best rebound. I don't know how much difference that makes, but Jack Rayner's result is fantastic. But put it in perspective, for guys running onto dirt, they're not that far behind. And it was literally 1952, which is 70 years ago. And there's only a minute or so between his time then and now. That staggers me when I see that.
I absolutely agree. And this was the fastest time ever ran on Australian soil by Jack Rayner. So, the comparisons are very interesting and great to see from Jack Rayner, but you're spot on. It is the wonderful thing about the Emil Zatopek story and that whole era of what he was able to achieve. And let's get into it. Let's get into part two, because we really want to discuss where he went. In part one, we spoke about a lot of his training, a lot of his background, and the results it gave him. And 1948 was his first Olympics, where he was able to show the world really what he was made of in a championship race. And I would akin, when I was thinking about everything we spoke about in part one and his innovation of training methods, and the innovation was so big that it changed the way training was done for the next 70 years, even up until now. Some of these principles are still sound. And I think we're in an era right now where the same thing is happening with the Norwegian method, and the Norwegians kind of shirk it a little bit. They joke about the Norwegian method in quotation marks and the Norwegian train, but they also do know that they're ahead of the game and they're revolutionizing it. And what they're doing now and the kind of results they're producing, I think will shape training and where training goes for the next foreseeable future. And that's what he did, didn't he, Zatopek? That's in that period. It was a really formative period that shaped running to what it is today.
He's a bit of a trailblazer, and as I think we briefly touched on last week, he wasn't to know whether it was going to be successful or not, and that's a huge risk. If you Ingebrigtsen has proved, and that whole family Ingebrigtsens, and now the triathletes with Gustav and Christian, they've both put down a new way of training. One's in running and one's in triathlon, or two are in triathlon. Oh, there's more than two. There's plenty more actually, but they've gone on a journey where it's unknown the outcome. And that's the bit that really intrigues me. Is it's easy to follow a program that's proven to be successful and get great results, but to try to do something different, to be better than just have great results, have incredible results, and that's what they're doing. And this is what Zatopek did. He chose a journey that no one had been on before. And did he know that was going to be successful? He had no idea. He just thought that I need to do it differently if I want to be competitive. And that's the bit that intrigues me is, and we relate it to our own journeys, each individual listening now is, be willing to change and don't accept the fact that what you did for 5 years or 10 years, I'll just keep doing that, because you're going to stay the same. And you need to up the ante, whether you change something about the structure or the frequency or the duration or the intensity. You just need to do things differently to give yourself a different stimulus, a different overload, a different progression. And this is the thing that I love about guys like this who are innovators in their time. And I just think it's a little bit ignored about the things that he did. And I suppose history, that's why we're talking about this, because history I think we'll see the 2018 to 2022 so far, things have changed from what they were in 2004 or 1983, or, I think people have really gone, well, yeah, this has worked for 50 years. Let's just tweak it a little bit and see what results we get. And there's a lot of similarities from what I see, what the Norwegians are doing and what Zatopek did. And he did a lot of volume, true, and that's kind of the Norwegian theory, is to really be strong aerobically. A lot of that zone 2, aerobic fitness, strength, altitude. I'm not sure Zatopek did any altitude, but he did a lot of strength where he ran in army boots and on really hard terrain through forests and trails, and with running in boots, and really tried to, when he got onto a track, he was doing, as we said, I don't know, 2200s plus 4400s plus 10 200s, ridiculous sessions that are just going to make him stronger, or it's be stronger or die, isn't it? It'll sort you out, won't it? If we don't know how he built up to that. They're renowned sessions that we've seen, but he might have done 5x2 and 10x4 and 5x2 and progressed his way over 4 years to get to those ultimate sessions that people rave about. So there's a lot of unknown things that we don't know about, but I'm suggesting that his bank of fitness was enabling him to be a 5:10 and a marathon runner in the 1 year, which has never been done before. He won the medal in all those events, the gold medal, and no one's ever done it since. But what a versatile runner to be able to do that in 3 different events.
Let's go through it. So we've established his training. We've established the fact that he was getting himself big on the world stage, and he goes to the London Olympics in 1948 and has a crack at the 5 and 10K double and wants to show how good he is. And he wins gold in the 10,000 meters, which becomes his famous pet event. And it's actually incredible. From the period of 1948, which is the Olympic year, to 1954, he won a record-breaking 38 10-kilometer races, going undefeated, and really cemented himself as the 10,000 meter king. And a well-deserved gold medal at the Olympics, and shows that he's the best 10,000 meter runner in the world. He fell short in the 5,000, and I say fell short, he still won a silver. So silver in the 5,000 meters, gold in the 10,000 meters. But it was that silver medal that absolutely burned within him, because he wanted the double. He wanted the double gold, and he believed he was good enough. And so he spends the next 4 years determined to do one thing and one thing only, and that's repeat his gold in the 10K and go one better in the 5K and win that elusive gold medal. And all his training was based around making sure that he was strong enough to win both races. And he actually is, in his training, he really made sure that he practiced that speed work, but he really practiced his kick. And when he was doing these sessions of 5, 10 by 200, 40 by 400, finished with the 200 speed work, he was practicing that last kick at the end of these training sessions. He was going as fast as he could in that final lap. And we come to 1952, the Olympics in Helsinki, and we get to the 5,000 meter race, and he was up against a very strong field of runners, and some who had faster times than him in the 5,000 meters. And as we said at the previous Olympics, in his biography, it says he'd blown the 5,000 meters, which is quite an aggressive word. I don't think he absolutely blew it, but he thought he could win it, and he got silver. There was talk that he misjudged the race at the end, but if you do watch the footage, it just looks like he's not strong enough. Anyway, he really, really wanted to win this one. And he had this plan, which he'd been working on for the previous 4 years. And he's quoted by saying by the time he got to the 1952 Olympics, he reckons he's done about 40,000 fast 400-meter laps. And his whole plan was to blow them away in that last lap with a 400-meter sprint at the end. And it's quite a remarkable race how it unfolded. And there was a few of them there still at the end. I think it was 4 of them coming into the last few laps. And the plan he'd been dreaming of for the last 4 years kicks into actions. He goes into the lead in the last lap for about 100 meters. And the next thing you know, he gets passed. And a second runner passes him and another runner passes him. And he's sitting in 4th and he's coming down the back straight. And his plan that he's been working on for 4 years is in ruins, and the other 3 are getting away from him. And what does Emil Zatopek do? Any normal person would really panic down this last straight. Everything he's been training for is going out the window. But instead of despairing, he remains cool. He thinks that they've panicked and they've gone too soon, and he still thinks they can beat them. And in classic Zatopek fashion, there's no way his head is going to give up. He claws his way back, and on the final bend, it's just pure willpower that wills him to the front. And he actually said, I could see the medal. He could see the gold medal. He looks like, in quotes, a deranged insect. And he was famous for having an absolutely shocking style. As we said in the last episode, he looked like a baby giraffe sometimes running. And he never cared how he looked. He just said, I just care how fast I can go. And somehow he blows the others away and wins by a decent distance and gets his gold medal in the 5,000 meters. And what a comeback story for him to go through all that and win that 5,000 meter race.
Yeah, what a great story you've told. It's so accurate. And watching the video of that event, I just thought he was done for all money. And, the training method that he had worked on, it paid dividends because he just forced himself back around them. Like he'd already just been passed. And then guys who go round people in the back straight, the people you're going past, that's it for them. They're normally done 9 times out of 10. And the next thing you know, he gets to the 200 to go and just starts going around them again. He wins by 10 meters in the end. And that practice of that finish, that last 300 meters that he so diligently thought about for 4 years, that's something to get in the car and go hell yeah about, have the victory drive home. Just a small example that you did when you were so desperately trying to break 2 minutes for 800. We got you in some of your training sessions when you were doing 8x200s to run the last 50 meters lifting your pace. So you were getting practiced at lifting your pace. So we determined that you were fading in the last 50 meters and you'd been so close you'd run 2001, 200.0 whatever, and you were just fading every time you did the next race. And so that was implemented into your training sessions so that it would be second nature. This is the sort of thing he's doing. He's making sure that he is strong from 300 to go. And amazingly, Inga Britson does the same tactic. And when he lost the 1,500 meters at the world titles, and normally Inga Britson sets a pace that is not possible for anybody to pass him. So if someone comes up on his shoulder, he just accelerates so that no one can come past him. And Whiteman went around him and almost cut Inga Britson off, threw his stride out, and then was having to go back around him to win and couldn't do it in the straight. And that was an example of someone who practiced something but hadn't got to understand that if something else goes wrong, what am I going to do? So they're examples of, strategy is quite important in a lot of the stuff that, from back in the 50s to even now, you can still be a great runner, but still blow the race if you've gone too soon or burnt the match too quickly or whatever strategy you use doesn't suit your style of running.
Yeah, and in Inga Britson's defense, I don't think there was much more he could have done. He just wasn't strong enough to come back around Whiteman. Whiteman was just too good on the day, I would say. But what blows me away from this 5,000 final was that his last lap, Zatopek, was in 57 seconds, which is a monster kick at the end of a 5,000 meters. And granted, he won it in, I think the time was 14:08. So like you said before, that time is still a minute slower than probably what the gold medal at the World Champs was this year. I think Inga Britson ran low 13s. The world record is now in the 12:30s. So it does seem like a long way off, but don't forget the type of track they're running on, the type of equipment they have, the shoes that they're in. For him to run a 57-second last lap, to me, is just astounding because even nowadays, the best runners in the world with the most advanced training methods, with the most advanced shoes. Their last 500 meter kick might still only be 54, 55, 56. So Zatopek isn't that far off them. And like we said, this is 70 years ago. So to me, that was one of the more astounding things about the time. I don't want to glaze over it, but he does the magical double, the coveted double at the Olympics, winning the 5,000 meters and 10 meters, which is just an incredible feat for any distance runner and so hard to do at the one event. And so he goes one better than 1948. He wins the double, gold, 5,000 meters and 10,000 meters. And then he does something completely surprising in a very last minute decision. And I couldn't verify exactly how last minute it was because, again, the myths like to say that he decided 20 minutes before the race that he was going to do the marathon. But more accurately, I think it was a couple of days in or a day before that he decided, no, I'm going to have a crack at this marathon. And so he decides to try and go for the triple, the 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters and marathon gold medal, which has never been done. And then to this day has never, ever been repeated. And he enters the marathon and in epic fashion, he wins the gold medal, which is just absolutely astounding and is the only person in history to win the 5,000, 10,000 meters and marathon at the same Olympics.
What an outstanding feat. And it's a great story about that marathon because Jim Peters had just set a new world record not that long ago. So he was the out-and-out favourite. And I think he'd run 2 hours 20 for the marathon. And that record had come down from 2 hours 25. So there was some really good runners that were capable of running fast. And to see the footage of that, it's quite, I love watching that old footage. And they had some little sections that you could see. And Peters just took off out of the stadium in the lead and just left everybody. And Zatopek, who's got speed, 5,000 meter and 10,000 meter speed, was finding the pace too much, and he's thinking, "Well, I'd like to keep up with this guy, but it's too fast. I can't even keep up if I wanted to." And the story goes that, of course, Peters went too hard and didn't really rate anybody else in the race. I don't think enough to really just try to run a championship race rather than I think he wanted to run, the best time trial that he ever run in his life, and not think about the other runners. And of course, the story goes that he actually ended up on his back on the ground, and Zatopek passed him and ended up winning comfortably by 2.5 minutes, and eventually ran a 2:23, which was an Olympic record, not the world record, but it was a new Olympic record. So, all hail Zatopek for finishing off the treble.
It's quite remarkable. Again, it's never been done since then, and he really cemented his place as one of the greatest track runners of all time, and that cemented his spot in history. And from then on, five Olympic medals. That's 4 gold and 1 silver. Like we said, he went on to win 38 10,000 meter races across that 6-year period. He then becomes, in 1954, the first person to ever break 29 minutes for the 10K. So there's a lot of elusive barriers in athletics, and they come up in all sorts of forms. The 2-minute 800, for the amateur athlete, that is. For the professionals, the 4-minute mile, which was covered for so long and then was finally broken. The sub 2-hour marathon, which Kipchoge has managed to do, albeit not under legal conditions. But yeah, Zatopek was the first person to break 29 minutes for the 10,000 meters. And like you said, Jack Rayner just ran 27:43. For Zatopek to go only a minute slower over a full 10K. I mean, a minute is at that pace is about 400 meters or just under. But that's not that far off when, again, the track is a lot slower, the shoes are a lot slower, his training methods are a lot less scientific. It's incredibly impressive. And so that sort of brings us to the conclusion and the summary of the story. And it became so famous and etched in history that we now in Australia have yearly the Zatopek Track Classic, which is the most prestigious track event in Australia. It's the pet event in the race is the 10,000 meters. The calendar of the event obviously has a whole lot of stuff in it. It has some 1,500 meter races, some 3,000 meters. But the pet events are the men's and women's 10,000 meters. It's actually on in December this year. It's normally in December, but has been moved around the last few years due to COVID. But it'll be great to see which Aussies turn up this year and who can win the famous Zatopek. And we grew up as athletic kids going to watch the Zatopek at Olympic Park. And lately, the crowds died off for a little bit there, but the last few years, the athletics crowds have been building again. This year's Zatopek, which was at the end of summer or middle of summer, was one of the biggest ass crowds I've seen in a while. So it's really exciting to see. And obviously now that anyone that's going there, hopefully, if they didn't know already, will know a little bit more about the history behind the man who the event is named after. And I think that's the point we wanted to finish on. Was we're really big here at Trivelo about the character of who you are as an athlete, because sports is one thing, and when it's time to compete and time to be a beast on the field, we absolutely want that. That's what we're all about. It's putting everything on the line to achieve the result you want. But in that, we still like to surround ourselves with what you said before in your gratitude with regards to going on training camps and training with like-minded people, is you want to surround yourself with people that are nice to be around, that lift you up, and your character is really important. And I think that's, a lot of the research I was doing and something that stood out to me, and you also know a lot of anecdotal stories about this. Zatopek was just known to be so selfless and humble, and I want to touch on some points about that. And one of the key stories was he actually threatened to boycott the 1952 Olympics because a fellow athlete of his was banned for political reasons. Obviously, the war had been going on. They were part of a communist government. One of his fellow athletes had stood up to the communist government and was banned from the Olympics. And then Zatopek came out and said, well, I'm not racing if he's banned. And they didn't call his bluff. They submitted, and the athlete got to race, and Zatopek didn't have to boycott. And imagine if, the 3 gold medals he would have had to give up if he did boycott it. But that was the kind of character he was. He was actually willing to sacrifice his own ambitions for the good of someone else. And I think that that is one story that really sums it up and astounded me.
And it's a beauty, isn't it? And look, he goes on to try to lift up his fellow human beings, and even giving, there's stories of him giving advice mid-race, not as a smart aleck, but as someone who really genuinely cares about someone who looks like they're in trouble. And, he was always smiling, always happy. We always say that people who love doing what they're doing will be good at it. And you could see from all of the footage, every time you see him, he's waving to the camera, and cameras weren't really prevalent in those days. Most of the athletics that was ever being completed and run was, there's no footage of a lot of it, but that's the character that people were talking to about him. And, and down the track, he ends up trying to help so many people that the communist government of the era ended up sending him down the mines, and he really disappeared from public life because of some of his outspoken
political opinions,
statements and opinions that got him in hot water, but they were all true and real and caring for other human beings. But it ended up being to his detriment, and he wasn't heard of for 20 odd years, and all of a sudden things changed in the world, and he was kind of released a little bit and came back on the scene, and that's when the Zatopek euphoria of the 80s really took off, when he was back out in the world again. Spreading the goodwill almost. So he's an incredible human being, and they're the things that you don't hear about with just sports people. He was very political and really pushed his views, so much so that it got him in massive trouble. And it was all to do with helping other humans. That was his entire mantra, was not for himself, but to uplift others. And I think that's an amazing trait to have, and it's not easy to have that when we are so determined to improve our own lives and self-centered, and including myself in all of this. That it's an easy thing to get caught up in and not think about your fellow human beings. But this is the sort of person that he was, and it's even more exciting to see someone succeed with all these traits. I love it. It's just brilliant.
Perhaps one of the best stories of all comes from Australia's Ron Clark, and he actually visited Emil Zatopek in Prague in 1966 after both had finished their their fantastic running careers. However, as good as Ron Clark's running career was, which included 17 world records, the coveted Olympic gold medal had eluded him. And when he went and visited Zatopek in Prague, Zatopek offered up his typical hospitality. They had a great friendship because of it. And at the conclusion of the trip, Zatopek handed Ron Clark a package as he was boarding his flight to leave Prague. And Clark opened the package midair to find an almost inconceivable gift. It was one of Zatopek's Olympic gold medals. And as Zatopek once said, great is the victory, but the friendship is all the greater. And I just think that as he was renowned for his friendly, hospitable, generous, selfless nature, he was, like you said, friendly to other athletes. He spoke 6 to 8 languages, and he was really big on trying to learn more languages because he wanted to communicate with more people. That was his goal with learning more language. And we're just really big on this. Sport is so much about this battle against yourself, against the clock, against your own PBs and against your competitors. But it's also this great place where people with common interest come together. And I think that, just his character and his persistence in self-experimentation, his training methods, both conventional and unconventional training methods, can still be seen in the world of athletics today. And I want to summarize it by saying that he provided endless examples of how an athlete and a sportsman should live. And Ron Clark's quote, I think, is a great finish to this story, where he says, Zatopek's enthusiasm, his friendliness, his love of life shone through every moment. There is not and never was a greater man than Emil Zatopek. And I think that's as high praise as you can get from a fellow athlete.
Yes, that's spine-tingling, the story of imagine giving away your gold medal to a fellow athlete who you felt sorry for, who deserved to win. Ron Clark deserved to win many, many gold medals at the Olympics, but through various circumstances, it just never quite happened. And as much as people deserve something, it doesn't always come to fruition. And Emil really understood that. And oh wow, what a gift! It brings an emotion to you. Imagine his face opening up that package and seeing a gold medal. And yeah, I think that's a great way to finish. And that sums up the human being that he was. And unfortunately, he died in early 2000s as a reasonably young person, really. But he had a pretty torrid life, I think. But boy, did he make the most of his opportunities, and that's why I think this story is really worth sharing, and it's a great example for many metaphors of life. If we can look to what he's done on his journey as a trailblazer, that everybody has an opportunity to do something constructive in their life and contribute to the world being a better place, and it's a great start with him.
And also the fact that one of the learnings I take from it is that it's not incredibly hard or difficult to be a nice person. It's not that being a world champion and being an Olympic gold medalist, that's pretty difficult to do. And being as mentally tough as him, that's pretty difficult to do, but being a nice person, being nice to athletes around you, being someone that lifts people up and is supportive and looks out for other people, that's all stuff that comes at no cost to you, and it is really easy. So I think that's really inspiring that that's possible for all of us, and that's what we want to see more of.
Fantastic. I think that's it from us on Zatopek, and I really enjoyed the discussion, and there's so many positives that hopefully the listeners can get out of it. It is one in historic terms, but there's certainly, the whole point of our podcast is to try to help people on their journey, and this story, if you can relate it to yourself and think about what things you can do in your journey, such as a trailblazer like Zatopek, then you will have a much more enjoyable period.
That's it for this episode. As always, thanks very much for listening. And we always say that the best thing you can do for us is share the podcast. Either share it and give us a review online, or share it with a fellow triathlete, cyclist, or runner that will enjoy it. And if you enjoyed this story, then please pass it on. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.